What's up, all you salty scholars out there? Welcome to the first ever Bad Teacher podcast. Go ahead and do me a favor. All right, this is the first one. We're trying to make this movement happen, make this movement work for all the bad teachers out there. So go ahead, take a look at our website, like us on Facebook, Instagram, share us, subscribe, do whatever it is that you do. But follow along here because we've got some interesting stuff for you coming up over the course of the next however many episodes they keep us on the air before they kick us off. I'll start out by telling you about us, about what bad teachers are, who we are, what we're trying to get across here, and what the whole point of this thing is. So why don't you start us off, Cook? What's the whole point of the bad teachers? What are we trying to do?
Well, the point is, American education is in disarray.
Garbage.
And we are here to reform education, and we want to implement computer-based instruction.
Is that what we're trying to do?
No.
Sound like a damn robot, man.
Absolutely not. So yes,
Mark Zuckerberg, the lizard people over here.
Teachers are expendable. Kids can learn better from computers and highly trained professionals. No, really, we're not trying to do anything except primarily to have an ongoing conversation about education and about some things that are working in classrooms, and mainly to talk to a lot of interesting people. And the two of us, I mean, you don't know, but with the two of us, we basically value authenticity.
Right.
And it's something maybe we've learned that sometimes affected teachers, being authentic in the classroom, trying to be true to yourself, and having fun in the classroom, because ultimately, if you're going to make it in teaching and survive and thrive and reach people, you have to be having fun yourself in the classroom, and making connections with students, and maybe a little bit of a priority of the actual learning over the grades and the grading system, which I'm sure we'll get into in more detail later.
And I think all of that encompasses the bad part of it, because, you know, when you think of your stereotypical teacher, you know, you think of, I'm sure the first thing that pops in your head is sitting in the back of that classroom, bored out of your mind, you don't know what's going on, you're falling asleep, teacher's banging on your desk, yelling at you to wake up, do your work, be quiet, sit still, and that's just not our philosophy at all. You know, personally, I like a little bit of mild chaos in the classroom. People moving around, talking, working together. Like, that's what's fun for me, and that's what's enjoyable for me. And like you said, the authenticity. If you're bringing your authentic self, there's going to be a little bit of that bad nature coming in there. You're going to be yourself. You're going to bring that personality to the table. And you're not going to be, the robot that Cook was. The computer-based education, do this worksheet online and get your little grade here and then move on and do whatever you're going to do next. We're trying to do something different, and like you said, start a conversation. We want to bring in some cool people who are doing things that are different. And I think, one thing like you said, it's we don't stick to just one philosophy. There's not one way to teach. There's multiple different ways, and we really want to highlight that and make that known to people, show people that there are different ways to teach, and you don't have to feel stuck in a rut or stuck in one mode of it.
No, exactly. I mean, like I said, one thing we share is being undogmatic and not necessarily believing that there's one perfect pedagogy, to use the dirty word of education.
That evil term, the pedagogy.
But so I mean, all models have value, and all models of education have value. But every community that you're in, every school system, every bureaucracy, it's going to require a little bit of that personal touch. And we're all working within imperfect systems. When you work with people and in the classroom. And in our particular setting, it's extraordinarily diverse. In the United States, is growing more diverse. And so it sometimes requires a diversity of approaches.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, there's always been the concern of how do you judge who is a good teacher,
right?
And much of it is based on standardized tests or trying to come up with some metric in order to sort good teacher versus bad teacher.
Teacher evaluations. I mean, half the time it just amounts to checking off boxes on a list. And how can you really know somebody or know how good a teacher is by sitting in the classroom for 45 minutes and frantically checking off boxes? Not to say, administrators got a tough job, but, the people that come up with these evaluations, like, what are they thinking?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, yeah, I can understand the points of view as far as the amount of money that's spent on education and the amount of tax dollars and trying to enforce some level of accountability. I mean, we get it. It's just dealing with people and with lives and with people's minds and trying to help them achieve whatever potential that they can achieve. I mean, it requires a lot of the teacher. And it doesn't work so well just when you try to constrain it inside of a rigid system or a way to approach things. So that's what we're just trying to go through. And not you could be anyone, you could be any person, and you could consider and call yourself a bad teacher.
Yeah, we'll permit it. We'll allow it this time.
Yeah.
But if you slip up, if we find you being a good teacher, you're kicked out of the club. No more podcasts for you. No more lessons.
And so much of teaching is, there are certain things you have to do and you have to accomplish within the bureaucracy of whatever school you're in and whatever school district, and still trying to be yourself and to find a way to be the best teacher that you can possibly be. But still, in the end, if you're not having fun,
that's the key.
Because working with people is going to drain you. It's going to burn you out.
Yeah.
And so
so it has to be worth it.
Yeah. So it has to be worth it. So in the end, you want to have a day and deal with sometimes difficult people and difficult classes and come out feeling good at the end of the day, and at least feel like you're enjoying yourself in the context of your job.
And not only that you're accomplishing something, that you're making a difference. I think that's the reason we're all here, is we want to make a difference in people's lives. We want to change things, but we want to have fun while we're doing it, while we're collecting that paycheck, all those sweet government dollars that we're getting, because we're we're in it for the money, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Make all the money.
Well, yeah, we're definitely not in the big union state or the big pay down here.
So in case you don't know, we're in South Carolina. What are we ranked in education? 48th, 47th or something like that. Pretty low. And teacher pay pretty low. No unions. I will say our district, I got to give it to them. I'm happy to work here, and our school is, great. I mean, we're in a really big school, but I think, I kind of like being able to fall in the cracks a little bit and just kind of keep to myself and do a little bit of what I want, which is kind of what it permits me, but to each their own. Some people like those small schools and, but I'm happy with where I'm at for sure.
Yeah.
South Carolina could be better, but making the best of it.
Well, it's a beautiful, extraordinary state, and as far as the natural setting, the things you can see, the things you can do. I mean, South Carolina is a great state. It's been good to me, and I'm grateful to be here and be a teacher here. So again, we're here to provide a space for different educators from all around the country. Some people that we know, we want to bring on the show to talk to them, and just to find out what has worked and what works.
Right.
And
to tell the stories of all these different teachers too, because there's so many different people out there that teach, that come from different backgrounds, that are doing different things. And it's so cool when you actually sit down and realize it. A lot of us, I'm sure growing up, we thought the teacher lived underneath the desk and didn't have a life outside of school or didn't have a past. They were just, Mr. Smith or Mrs. Johnson or whatever. We didn't really stop to think about it. But there's some really cool teachers out there that come from some really cool places. But also, too, we want to share what we're doing as well. So one thing on our website that you'll find is we are going to try to share lessons in the podcast, things that we're doing, things that our guests are doing. And we're going to try to upload some of that stuff. At the very least, we'll upload a little a short write-up of some things that we're doing, whether it's a technique, whether it's actually a full-blown lesson, an idea for a lesson. We're going to try to give back to you guys for, supporting us. And it's all going to be free. We're open source guys here. We really like to share information because that's what learning's all about, and what getting better is all about.
Yes, I mean, I like websites like Teachers Pay Teachers. That's a great concept. But yes, we very much support the open sharing of information, techniques, knowledge, and the whole thing is we want you to come and actually you can take something that you can immediately implement in your own classroom, whether it is an outline, a basic concept for how to approach education in whatever particular subject that you're into, and a place to share some of those things with other people, and also just a chance to watch some entertaining interviews with different people.
Well, we're going to try to interview strictly teachers for the most part. I mean, maybe not strictly teachers, but mostly teachers that are doing different things, some professors, some people maybe that have left teaching, possibly students. We've got some ideas, and we've got a few people that we've kind of started to line up. So hopefully by our second episode, we'll have somebody on to interview to come in and talk to you guys. But this one, we're really just laying it out there for you, showing you what the Bad Teachers is all about, hoping that we can get all you other bad teachers on board with us. But let's tell them a little bit just about ourselves real quick. Give them an idea of who we are as bad teachers, where our backgrounds. So for me, I was born here in South Carolina, the son of, parents from New York, which, it's kind of an interesting meeting of the minds there, between the South and the North. So a little bit of an outsider growing up, not too much, but, I grew up with parents that were high school dropouts. My dad dropped out as like a freshman or a sophomore in high school. I think my mom dropped out her senior year. And so I always had the carrot and the stick. It was always, if you don't do your work, if you don't do this or that, you're going to get punished. My parents were great, but, I think we all have, our parents have definitely pushed us to different lengths and different extents. And my parents were always, we didn't do good in school, so you have to do good in school, which was always interesting growing up. But that also, I think that really informed a lot of my ideas about education. I always thought, like, going through, like, man, like, there's got to be something better to this. There's got to be, like, a way to make this fun and make kids, like, want to learn. And so that was always a driving thing for me. I went off to college and I had these ideas. But as many college students, go to college and do, I had my fair share of partying and getting into trouble. So, I had those kinds of experiences too, failed a few classes and had to learn from that. But all those experiences kind of helped me become a teacher. I eventually went off and I taught, kite surfing and stuff. And, I did do a lot of kind of the extreme sports stuff like snowboarding and kiteboarding and surfing and stuff like that. And I taught it. And that was always fun. Teaching older people, it's mostly like, 30, 40-year-old dudes who are out there, doctors and lawyers. So that can always be interesting. You get those really nerdy types that are, all in their head and all over the place. So that was an interesting experience going from that into teaching high school. Because you get kids in high school that are either totally into something or they're not into it at all, and so that was a big shift for me. But yeah, my journey into teaching was kind of a colorful experience growing up and coming into it. Now, things are great for the most part, as good as they can be. I got 2 dogs at home, got a wife. Couldn't ask for much more. So tell us, Cook, what's your deal? Where you come from?
Where do I come from? From the planet Earth.
Mothership. From the Earth, from inside of the Earth. You're one of the reptilians, the lizard people.
Yeah. Wouldn't be the first time.
Right.
But yeah, I was born outside of Philadelphia, Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. From Irish Catholic family in Philadelphia who had all relocated to different areas, primarily South Jersey, and I pretty much grew up in Delaware. I had a little bit of a different childhood. Just, I never really knew my father very well. My mom divorced him when I was about 1 or so. Then my mom remarried, and then separated from him when I was about 4 or 5, and then got remarried again. So I had an experience in childhood, a little bit of moving around to different places, different areas, even at that time. I spent some time in the city of Philadelphia, in Southwest Philadelphia, sometime in South Jersey.
Yeah.
And
South Philly's cool, though.
Yeah, well,
I like South Philly.
Yes, yeah, it was. I mean, Philly anyway, as a kid back in, I mean, even now or in those days, is just a lot different than the suburbs as far as,
sure.
the interaction with other kids and families. And definitely there was something lost when people moved to the suburbs and everybody moved away from each other. But, so, I mean, I was a precocious kid as far as reading and just, I've always been an obsessive reader and extremely curious, like, the stereotype of always asking why type questions. And, I was recognized as being gifted, in about the 3rd grade or early in the 4th grade. And so I grew up going through gifted education in Wilmington, Delaware, which really was almost the highlight of my education. Probably was 5th and 6th grade in the gifted class in Wilmington, Delaware. Just because the quality of the teachers that I had then, and they really allowed me a lot of freedom, because I was always a kid that I was always kind of the teacher's pet to a certain degree, because the teachers liked me because, maybe because my level, my brightness or engagement or just my personality or some other things, but I could be distractible or just willful. So sometimes in a lot of classes, I'd have another book under the table that I'd be reading because I just didn't feel like, whatever they were teaching at that time, I didn't really want to pay attention to.
Well, I can second that. That was me too.
Yeah. And so I was always reading something else, on the school bus, at home. I mean, I was involved in a lot of athletics and things like that. Sometimes it's a stereotype of gifted kids that they would be uncoordinated or these other things.
Big nerd.
Yeah, but the truth is, we would beat the other kids if we played, indoor hockey or these other.
You got to have the brains to go with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, to play in any kind of team sport or whatever. I mean, I guess some of those things help. So, I mean, I grew up playing a lot of sports, reading obsessively. I was, overall good student, got good grades, but, somewhere later in my education, let's say maybe through middle school and then probably more so in high school, I started to get a little lost at that point as far as, I could still get the good grades, but as far as getting what I could have out of education, and I don't know that I was really getting it then. Then I think I fell into where we talk about where, some bright kids, if you're getting grades for things, it became a game to try to get a good grade without doing anything or with very little effort. And so, after that, I mean, again, my story is complex as far as what happened after high school and all those things. But in high school, I applied to the military academies. So I got nominations to West Point, alternate nomination to the Naval Academy, and Joe Biden gave me a nomination to the Merchant Marine Academy, which I didn't know anything about at that time. I mean, this was before you could Google. I really wanted to go to the Naval Academy because we grew up boating on the Chesapeake Bay, and I've been to Annapolis many times, and that's kind of where I wanted to go. So I felt like I failed because I got this alternate nomination. I didn't get the full nomination. I got the alternate nomination. I wasn't sure I wanted to do it because, going in the military and, you had to serve the 5 years after and just the whole intensity of that and everything else. So, and I didn't know anything. Merchant Marine Academy might have been the best bet. I mean, I think I met this is crazy because he probably interviewed me you had to go through an interview process and all this stuff. I remember sitting in an office, and I'm sure it was him, but I didn't know who he was, right? I was 16. So I didn't know who he was. I didn't know who Tom Carper was, although I met him in the interview room before the whole interview process. So I just remember a nice guy sitting in an office, having a nice conversation, And the Merchant Marine Academy, turns out, has one of the highest returns on investment. Like if you go there, as far as
Right.
how successful your career is and all these things. But I didn't think of those terms anyway. Like I tell my students now, what did I want out of life? I wanted to just be able to learn, right? I love learning, and I have never lost that. I still have that curiosity that I had even then, and I wanted to have fun. So really, the two things: did I want to produce stuff? Did I want a big job? Did I want a house in the suburbs, like my parents, or these other things? No, I didn't really. So I mean, it was like, that's what I say. I was kind of born to learn, and to a certain degree, I was born to teach, because I always felt like, that's probably my destiny also, just in the sense that because I love to learn so much, I'm probably ultimately
right.
going to be teaching other people. And of course, my story, and we'll get into it more later, there's a lot of twists and turns, but I finally made it back to some degree of stability, because there's a lot of trying to go to college, not making it. And both Marv and I are graduates of College of Charleston.
Yeah, College of Charleston. About to graduate from College of Charleston again, round 2.
I know, sweet. That's awesome, man. But I graduated in 2011 from College of Charleston.
Yeah, I was there 2013.
Yeah, with the chemistry, BS in chemistry, BS in biochemistry. My plan was to go to graduate school, get my PhD, and maybe follow the academic route. Because I said, it's like, I'm kind of like, in some sense, a born scholar. It's just my identity. The thing I don't like is the politics, and
that's always tough.
There's a lot of other factors that could go into it. So in a way, through everything that I met my wife, who's from South India, which is kind of extraordinary, and I have 2 kids. And, there's many other things that I've done, like, I became a registered nurse, et cetera. So, I mean, I can go on and on about all those things. But like I was telling Marv, I don't really like to talk about myself very much for whatever reason.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way for sure, too. Like, there's plenty of different experiences I've had, too. Like, I don't know, like, I'm really, really into cars and fixing things and, doing different stuff with my hands and all that. And, I mean, we could sit here and riff on it forever.
So in a way, though, I mean, going back to the whole route my life took, it's even at that young age, I suffered I was almost a burnout, which sounds crazy. I mean, I guess if you're younger, I know my students, they could probably understand it.
Yeah.
It was like,
there's a lot of kids like that are misunderstood. We look at them like, oh, they just don't care, but probably they're just burnt out by the way we teach them. And
yes, exactly. And the road of achievement that I was on, like, some of my friends went to Cornell. I mean, other friends went to Harvard. It was on this track to success, and I fell off at that point.
Yeah.
And it's not so easy to get back on that all after, and I didn't really even want to.
Yeah.
See, I mean, that's the thing. It was like,
I
all my
agree.
life I wanted something different out of life. I was seeking, an authentic life, and whatever that meant, I didn't even really completely understand. I may have had something to do with some of those extracurricular activities, but
I think that's the biggest thing that we share, though, is, because we come from different backgrounds, but I think the biggest thing that we share is, like, to be a bad teacher, or at least for us, our definition of a bad teacher, or who we are as bad teachers, we were bad students at one point. Not that we weren't scholars or weren't, like, interested in learning. I've always loved to learn. I've just, like, especially as a kid, just voracious with I loved books as a kid, but just any type of information I could get my hands on. And I was a bad student, straight up. I was not the straight A, and I also saw the same things happening. I didn't, I stayed and did, graduated from college the first time around after 5 years of, stumbling through it. But, I have friends from high school that I see that are all doctors. Some have gone to Harvard or Wake Forest or Cornell or all these different places and are doing different things, chemists or biologists or whatever, but it's like you said, I always wanted to have that authentic life and be true to myself. And another thing I think we share is, maybe not from, like, the youngest age, but at least from high school, like, I kind of figured out that teaching was my calling. Just because I love, I'm a little bit antisocial, when it comes to daily interactions, but man, I cannot just sit at a desk at a computer in silence. I really like to move around and talk and interact.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. That's the same thing. It would be like, yeah, could I have been a chemical engineer? Yeah, probably. But then I thought, do I really want to work at one factory and optimize their production line? And I work at Johnson and Johnson and work on diaper formulations. I was like, no, there's no possible way. I mean, it's just the person that I am. It's just, even still, I'm a teacher. Do I necessarily know this is where I'll be forever? Mm-hmm. I'll always be a teacher. And hopefully I'll always be a bad teacher.
Oh, we will. But I don't think there's any doubt about that.
But it's my life has always been, it's a process of evolution and becoming and learning and being open to the learning experience. Because it's like, even to be a teacher, you have to constantly be open to learning new things.
Right. Yeah, for sure. You definitely do. And I think part of our background and our experience really allows us to relate to kids. That's like one of the biggest things that I've always been big on is relationships. I mean, we were talking about this the other day with comparing the properties of being a good salesman with being a good teacher. It's that building the relationship and the rapport is like the very first thing you got to do if you want to transmit any lessons or knowledge or wisdom onto somebody else. In the case of the salesman,
and questioning,
making the deal, right? Questioning
is extremely important.
Right.
I mean, and then demonstration, demonstrating who you are as a person, who you've been as a person. And then in science for us, actively showing the demonstrations of different scientific principles.
Yeah, exactly.
And demonstrating different ways you can approach problems, you can solve things.
And demonstrating it and not telling them the answer. I think that's one of the most important things.
And again, it's just, with us, we don't believe there's any right way or wrong way. It's just, we're definitely both of the scientist mindset of experimenting and trying to figure out what works. And we both come to a little bit of the inquiry model as far as,
different variations
trying not to take the fun out of it. Well, for ourselves, for one, but also don't take the fun out of it for the students.
Right.
And because science, if you over-explain it, I mean, obviously it can become extremely dry and boring and abstract.
Because I think, like, growing up, like, we've all had that experience. Like, I think of, like, Legos or something like that where, you had the older brother or maybe a parent, you were doing it and maybe you weren't doing it just right. And they just said, well, just give that here. And they did it for you. And then that took all the fun out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just, it's like a fun suck, and kids want to have fun when they're learning. I mean, that's half of the reason that we're here is to enjoy learning. And if kids aren't enjoying learning, if you're not enjoying learning, the methods of being a teacher, what are you in it for? Oh,
yeah. Well, one of the things you had said, I wanted to say, what you were saying, we were bad students, and we were. But I didn't get my act together until I was a little bit older. So I graduated 2011.
Yeah.
So when I went back to school, though, I was a good student.
Yeah.
Meaning that I would always read everything ahead of time. I really wanted a level of engagement that the professors even couldn't really, they didn't. I saw that there was bad teaching going on all the way through the university system in the sense that I already read the textbook chapter. I don't want to see 80 slides.
Right, of the same thing.
That you printed from the textbook because kids don't read the textbook in college.
Yeah.
So I kind of saw that, there was ineffective teaching going on everywhere also. And both of us said, and it's common for anybody, but it's not till you get to upper level classes when you start to get those personal relationships with your professors, and maybe you start, for science, you're in the lab more and all those kinds of things, that it really starts to come to life for you. And so, and a lot of the people who are at the higher levels, they kind of thought you had to go through that trial by fire earlier, like all the boredom and the tedium and everything, and you had to prove yourself to get through that until you could get to the good stuff.
Right.
So, but then even then I said, well, doing, upper level synthesis and this other things, that it was really fun. And it was like, man, what a shame that I wasn't able to do this sooner. Like maybe everything would have fallen into place more. Like we talked about, the last time we talked, just about sometimes when you're young, you just don't really know you don't know what's possible. right?
Mm-hmm.
And now with the internet and the way you can look up things, maybe kids can expose themselves a little more,
Right.
but still, ultimately, teaching is one-on-one. Like, that's why I know that I was joking in the beginning that there's a whole movement they would love to get rid of teachers where you watch great courses or you watch somebody from
Khan
MIT give a
Academy
lecture,
or whatever.
and then you have low-paid people who,
administrators.
Who
just
like guide the
administer.
students a little bit. But I mean, we know that it's still that one-on-one transmission of knowledge.
Right.
Is that's where it happens, and getting your hands into it and actually knowing it. And so I'd say to like, why don't we do this sooner? Like, well, you can't. Chemical, it's too dangerous. Younger people couldn't do this, whatever. And I understand all those concerns.
But taking a step out on a limb though, like because that's my big thing, and I don't know. I feel weird saying this, but my big thing is do it first, ask questions later. They'll come to you if you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Don't be timid or nervous about trying something.
I know, and we'll get into that. So now we'll talk about some things that we might share with you, some ideas that we've had, and in a way, by us getting together and making this website and this podcast, I mean, we say bad teacher, it's going to make us better teachers.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's going to force us to focus.
Right.
Because for a long time, I've been talking about organizing a whole chemistry course based on cooking, which has been done at MIT, like for an elective and some other things. But so there are things that we're going to share with you, and by having this website, it's going to compel us to kind of shape things
like
in a way that we might not.
Like a weekly thing that we're sharing, and so that'll help us to compile something, a body of work, from multiple different areas. Like we said, we're going to try to get, our guests to come on and bring something that they're doing.
Yes,
so that,
I mean,
where it's not just us. You're seeing like Spanish teachers or English teachers maybe, or whatever people are teaching.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't just about high school science teachers. I mean, although that's our background, and that's kind of where we come from, and maybe partly how we think. But it's really open to anyone, and we're going to encourage anyone that comes on here to talk that they bring something that they could share. I mean, it might just be an outline for a general idea. Sometimes that's all it takes.
Right.
Like, I mean, sometimes if you just see that one thing that can kind of inspire you, and you're like, oh yes, I can, because teaching, no matter what subject it is, there are certain approaches that you can adopt, and then you can implement in your own classroom. And like we all go through training, and especially tech training now with the virus and the pandemic. And a lot of that was extremely useful. It's just there were many where I felt like, it was okay, but there was, I don't want to say there was nothing in it for me. But like there wasn't really something necessarily that I could immediately take away and use. And that's what we want to try to have here, I think.
So let's go ahead and let's share a few things that we're doing right now. It's a couple of lessons that we've got going on. So for me, I just wrapped up my projectile motion unit. So we finished up with that, and I like to, like we said, inquiry approach to things. And I personally in my classroom, I kind of combine that with a little bit of what's called constructivism. Another one of those pedagogies. But I really like this one. It's based on the idea that students actively construct their own knowledge. That you don't give them the knowledge; they're building it inside their heads. And so this approach, basically, involves students working together cooperatively in groups. The teacher is not the keeper of information. You're basically not necessarily a facilitator. I like to think of it as a big brother. I'm just showing them some cool stuff and saying, well, how does this work? And poking them in a direction if they're going a little too far off, the path that I want them to go on. It's okay if they have to swerve around a little bit, but, ultimately I don't want them going, way off. And, it involves me, doing these demonstrations, having students follow some type of scientific method or some type of scientific process to generate some knowledge. So they model the situation themselves. They, after they come up with the model, they have to test that model. So one big thing that we did in this unit, the lab that we did, was the classic, if you drop a bullet and shoot a bullet at the same time, which one hits the ground first? And so, I showed them, they hit at the same time, right? But their goal was to explain why do they hit at the same time. And this is without any prior knowledge, I mean, they had a little bit because they had done one-dimensional motion the unit prior. So basically they were taking that 1D motion knowledge and expanding it into 2 dimensions on their own without me like necessarily putting a lot into it or giving them a lot of prior knowledge. I didn't do any lessons. Everything that was like a lecture was a recorded lecture that we did as a flipped classroom they did at home. But this was a long, prolonged lab that took, 3 or 4 days to do. But I treated that as the lesson, as the lecture almost. That's what they were supposed to be getting their knowledge from the unit out of, was this one very, very intense lab. And lots of questioning. And at the end, they had to present their results and evidence and either refute or support the model that they created. And at the end, if we needed to change it, we changed it. And then the assessment for this unit, instead of doing a test, we did shoot for your grade. Where basically kids had to put a target on the floor. Okay, they roll a marble down a ramp off a desk, and they have to predict where it's going to land. And about 10 out of 100 points are based off of where it hits the target. So it's always kind of fun. They're always nervous at first, and they're like, oh my god, like my grade's going to be terrible. But 90% of the grade is just the work, and every single one of them, they always hit the target. But it's been fun. It's enjoyable for me because honestly, in the classroom, I'm doing less work than they are in the classroom. Outside, I really have to do a lot of planning and thinking and being creative, which is what I like. I like being creative and coming up with these labs and activities and stuff. But in the classroom, I'm just walking around and, making sure they're not going too off course. Just, if I see something that's like, whoa, I'm like, all right, well, have you guys thought about this? Like, what's going on here, huh? So what you got going on, Cook?
Yeah, well, you don't know this, but Marv is an extraordinary teacher. I mean,
I'm something. I don't know about extraordinary.
No, I mean, because, that's what I said. There's bad teachers everywhere, but, he really tries to, I mean, instead of going through traditional instruction, just having the students doing thing and learning by doing. And, he creates a great connection with the students. And, everybody likes Marv as far as...
I hope so. Hope they don't talk about me behind my back.
No. So, yeah, but...
Literal bad teacher.
No, but it's just... so for me, it's been really different because for chemistry, I've tried to move to, what Marvin's doing in the classroom, which can be a little harder because, like I said, some of the chemicals can be dangerous and you're dealing with flames and you're dealing with some of these other things. One of my most successful things that I did was having the students use copper sulfate pentahydrate, which you can buy from the hardware store.
Right.
And you can buy muriatic acid, which is HCl, from the hardware store, and you can buy potassium nitrate and a lot of other cool stuff to kind of stock a home chemistry kit. So I wanted to just show them, this is something that's in the hardware store. These blue crystals, and copper sulfate pentahydrate is great because it's colorful and. Some of the fun of chemistry is the color changes and the colors and the smells and, all those, the exploding balloons and all those other things that you see. But I had the students go through a series of transformations with copper sulfate pentahydrate. I mean, very easy, but to make copper carbonate and then to actually use a crucible to heat it to produce copper metal, metallic copper. And when I ran the labs, I ran them not the way we normally would, where they're super planned and there's a protocol that tells them do this, do that, do everything else. I gave them a really short, you're going to do this, put this into this, and that's it. Like almost like one line almost, and just kind of turn them loose in the lab to start to do it.
Safety protocols though, right?
Oh well, yeah. Well, I mean, yes. I mean, everybody's got to wear goggles and all those kinds of things.
No, not to eat it.
Yeah, well, exactly. Even though I didn't necessarily say that. And if you know me, Marv, I might.
Who knows? They might have eaten some. Who knows? Maybe they're missing an eyeball now and it just kind of fell out.
Yeah, I would just say, well, you might get cancer 20 years from now. You'll be long gone. But yes, I am like the old school kind of the mad scientist kind of guy. But so I have to rein that in a little bit. But I turned them loose to do this, and without over planning it and without over explaining it, because I didn't go into teaching all about double replacement reactions and stoichiometry and all these other things, which are very important to chemistry. I just want to, because people were doing chemistry long before it was quantitative, long before there was a periodic table. I mean, they're making pure fumes, dyes, soap. I mean, very complex chemistry. And they didn't know all this stuff, but I mean, so that to me, that was partly where the fun and the joy of chemistry comes in. Is because chemistry lab was scary. I mean, when you go to college and you have like a protocol they give you, and you're in a big lab environment where it's like time pressure and you have to get it done. I mean, I still enjoyed it because, like I said, we're the kind of people. Almost any situation where we're going to try to have fun with it, and
try to
enjoy
learn something
and get the most out of it. But they weren't really comfortable, fun, exploratory lab environment. It wasn't until later when, like I said, when you have your own hood and you're designing your own reaction.
There's nobody to tell you what to do.
Yeah, exactly. But so by turning them loose a little bit, I mean, they really had a lot of fun. I don't know if exactly my teaching of stoichiometry even in that time was as good, or if they got as much out of it as far as, like the quantitative side and the formulas and all that stuff. But they got a little bit of the fun of chemistry. And I had a lot of other things that I'll get into or I'll share too. But they got a lot out of it. And it was a very successful. And of course, not everybody could do, and this is a case where it's a big school and big classroom. So it's not necessarily, not everybody would be comfortable with 25 kids in a lab where you kind of are partly letting them do their own thing. So, I mean, that's kind of the person I am, that where I can tolerate a certain amount of chaos and still be extraordinarily aware, where you're saying, I still take safety seriously, and I can see if somebody's doing something really dumb, but I'm much more tolerant of them doing dumb things. And like, because kids do, I mean, we know everybody does. Even when I was in a lab, you just do some really weird stuff that doesn't even make any sense. And then later you're like, man, I had no clue what I was doing. So I allowed them to be like lab babies and have a little fun. And it was much more successful than when it's a script, tight lab, and you're just on top of them, and where you even have to yell sometimes to get them to listen. I just like put all that aside and just kind of roll with it. And it was really one of the best experiences I had. And that's where I progressed. And that's the model, like allowing a room in my classroom where kids can come and do a little mini lab and do stuff on their own. It's not a grade. It's just if they're into it, they can come and do some of these things. So, and it's fun for me because I didn't get a chance to do I didn't get a chance to do this stuff myself. Like last time I had a student that you also taught, who's an unusual guy, but he loved crystallization. So he actually crystallized iron sulfate, which is these beautiful emerald crystals, they used to distill that to make sulfuric acid. I didn't even know. There are things every year, and I went through all the intense chemistry training and in graduate school and all that stuff. But I'm learning stuff all the time. I didn't know vitriol came from oil of vitriol, from distilling iron sulfate. And that's how they originally got, one of the oldest syntheses of sulfuric acid. So then I learned this stuff, and then I can come back, and next time I teach it, I have a little more passion for it, even because I've learned a little more about it. I've learned even more why it's so cool. And then the one of the big things is the chemistry of cooking, which I eventually, I'm going to put stuff out there on this and different lab ideas.
Yeah, you got to do it. I've been telling you for years, man. You got to get it together.
I mean, because basically we have a lot of kids. They're not as strong on the quantitative side, but everybody loves cooking. And in fact, through cooking, you can teach almost all of chemistry. You can have a whole unit on salt, right? Because salt covers all ionic compounds, but you base it just purely on salt mines. Whatever.
Phase change, heating and cooling.
And you can have one on sugar. You have one on heat. You can have one on fats. I mean, you can go down the line with different elements
and use it to teach the
acid
standards like
base.
single replacement reactions,
Exactly.
stoichiometry, ionic and covalent bonding.
Yeah, every single thing in chemistry, practically,
right,
can be taught in the context of cooking. And culinary is a big thing here at the school, and even so, it mainly require hot plates and some other things. But I think the level of engagement with something like that would be so much higher. And that's one of the things the bad teacher is, striving for, that having fun and having that engagement from students. Right. And then you get the learning in, like, it's like the spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the whole idea that they have an experience and they have fun, and then you can put a lot of information.
That gets the spark. The interest.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the cliche, but the kids or your students might not remember anything that you taught them, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And so if you can create students that are more engaged, have a higher level of engagement, you can activate their natural innate curiosity. Yeah, everybody's different on the scale of that. Like maybe an extreme case, like almost pathological curiosity that almost got me killed. I mean, really. I mean, my hero would be.
We got the cat here. Curiosity.
Yeah,
killed,
I mean,
killed the cook.
my hero would be Walter from the show Fringe,
yeah.
who's like an ultimate mad scientist character, or other people like that. So I'm not saying you necessarily want to follow my footsteps, but we both agree we're both egalitarian. We don't believe in necessarily pure elitism, that it's everybody's right to have fun and to get a little of that fun back in their own lives and their fun back in school.
Well, yeah, man. Just to reiterate what you said, Cook is awesome in terms of chemistry, especially. Like, I think back to my own experiences in chemistry, and I never once, at least I don't remember. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. I don't remember doing a single chemistry lab that was inquiry based, that involved like chemicals, like an actual like chemistry experience, that was inquiry based, where you're throwing some chemicals, minimal amount of directions, or just maybe even just a question, what happens when you do this? And, explain it, figure it out. I never really had an experience like that actually involved, chemistry. It might have been like, oh, here's some paper and, like, here's some cutouts, like, put this puzzle together or whatever. But, I think that real authentic experience is just so cool that, you were able to do that. And especially, like you said, it was simple as in terms of the materials, just stuff you found at the hardware store.
Washing soda and copper sulfate pentahydrate. And then I also used some sodium hydroxide. I was trying to synthesize one of the first polymers, which is, you use the sodium, the copper hydroxide. But the problem is you have to use ammonia, and ammonia is not very easy to get because of
pure
Breaking
ammonia.
Bad. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I could
this
get
guy,
it.
he cooks meth in the back.
Yeah,
Don't let him lie to
no.
you. He's got a meth lab in the lab.
No.
Well, speaking of that, why don't we just we'll end off today with our first recurring segment here, the bad teacher moment. We want to make this a thing. Want to get you guys to share with us online on social media. Tell us your bad teacher moments. I thought I would just share one today. Because, I like to play practical jokes. That's one of my big things. Or me and Cook are both very sarcastic with kids and stuff like that. It's all in good fun. We're not going to pick on somebody, but I definitely like the practical jokes. They make me laugh. They keep me entertained when I'm starting to get bored. Especially this one student. It was my first year of teaching. We had recycling. He would put his trash in the recycling bin every day. And I would tell him not to, and he kept doing it. So eventually I just started collecting it. I had a garbage bag in one of my drawers that I collected all his trash. And then he was the type of student who would never open his book bag a single time in class. He would come to class and he would participate in stuff, but he would just never open his book bag, never take out a notebook. And so one day he asked, like, can I use the restroom? I said, yes, go to the restroom. And so I took all that trash and just stuffed his book bag full of the trash. And he went to the next class, and apparently all of his friends, he opened up his book bag in the next class, and it was just full of all the trash that he had thrown in my recycling bin. And all of his friends were laughing at him, and the teacher was like, "Did you eat all that?" There was like a box of Cheez-Its and candy wrappers and all kinds of stuff. But I showed him. I taught him.
Yeah, well,
he learned a lesson after that one.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's where I was saying at the beginning, I couldn't think of a total bad teacher moment of my own. I mean, there were many of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said in my and believe me, this is my 6th year, so I'm still a beginner. Like we've said, or I've said, when you start any profession, my own opinion is it takes about 5 years to reach the beginner stage. And so you have to go through that transition.
Right.
And if you don't know about classroom management,
yeah,
classroom management is important. Mm-hmm. Now Marv and I have gained a certain level of a superpower as far as like just managing without managing.
Yeah.
But
anarchy.
But and we're also tolerant of a lot of things some other people wouldn't be tolerant of. But in my first year, and every teacher talks about there's one class that is like just a little insane and can drive you insane, right? To where you could go on angry dad rants or just lose it or become an alcoholic.
I've got a bad teacher moment for another time where I did one of those.
Yeah. So during my first year, stoichiometry, right? It's a big deal in chemistry, and students hate it, and it's one that can make you like, want to go to Thailand and spend a month in an opium den or whatever. It's going to make you want to quit the job. At first, so during we used to have to give a standardized test. My first year, it was the ACT quality core. It was a big deal. Like any class that this is what we're talking about. Yeah. Any class that has these end of the year exams, they're often run like very regimented. Mm-hmm. Like every teacher's supposed to do the same thing, and
there's no time to go back.
And so we were teaching at a high level. And again, I thought my first year that I'm a chemist and I'm going to come in and I'm going to talk knowledgeably about chemistry and I'm going to be engaging and funny and kids are just going to listen and they're going to learn.
Little did you know.
Oh no! Well, even during the interview, the admin said to me, like, they really like me, but they're like, yeah, I think you might find out like the kids they're just not going to want to do it, or they're just going to be apathetic. Just going to say Mr. Cook, whatever. And so whatever. So we were doing stoichiometry, and we used to have it was a pretty hard, it was not multiple choice. You had to sit down with a blank piece of paper and these problems and write out the answers. And, our college prep classes don't necessarily have those kind of students in it sometimes. And we were teaching at too high a level. So I gave out the test, and there were a lot of real extreme personalities in that class. I mean, a whole mix from, athletes to, whoever, just drama queens, etc. And so the class revolted. So the class is like, we're not doing this. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, this is test day. You're going to take this test. I'm like, because my mentor was this Dr. Hudson, who's, a legend at Somerville and really an incredible, extraordinary person. Mm-hmm. Could have been, world-class PI. In chemistry and all those kinds of things, and a great teacher, very different than us. Oh yeah, maybe as far as her approach, but awesome mentor. So the girl said she was going to go down and talk to Dr. Hudson because she was like the head of the chemistry department. So she went and got Dr. Hudson in the middle class. The whole class is everyone's yelling and
just revolt.
So they went and brought my mentor to the class, and But finally, we restored order, and whatever. Everybody failed that test.
It sounds like you got the last laugh. No, yeah, whatever, guys.
No. But teachers know. Right. Failure. It's kind of like now I have kids, but they say don't give your kids a punishment. That it's going to be a punishment for you. Right. So failing kids is a punishment for you. Yeah. Because what's going to happen? Their parents are going to be upset. They're going to be coming to you for help every other day. Yeah, exactly. So, I learned back then I'm still trying to hold to a very high, rigorous standard, but I'm always walking the line between I'm pushing you, but I don't want to create a bunch of more work for myself. So I mean, that's what we're talking about. Well, I know. Well, we're talking about you want to make it fun for yourself, right? And it's not fun if you. Well, it was kind of fun, but
it's like optimization, I think, is what.
Yeah, well, that was back then. I would have 10 kids. This is good teaching, but I would have 10 or 12 kids in the morning who I'm helping. They're all up on the board, writing out problems, learning stoichiometry. That was awesome. But if you're a chemistry teacher, this period of this can be exhausting, right? Because it's not very easy, and so I mean, in the end, that class revolt, and there'd be other stories with that class, and there are many other things that have happened. Like telling kids to jump out a window.
There you go. Yeah, I've had some desks on fire. Ooh, man, we have some good ones, but we want to hear yours.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, that'll be Mar will say you can send it.
Yeah, send it in. Share it with us on social media for sure. We want to share some of those on air and also get some of our guests, that are on with us to share their own bad teacher moment. But yeah, Cook, this has been a good first episode. What do you think, man? I think we've
I think it's an auspicious beginning.
Yeah.
And we will change the world.
Yeah.
Be the change. 100%. Be the change you want to see in
with
the
your
world.
Robot Mark Zuckerberg, computerized education, right?
Yes, we're going to turn this into a system.
A system, yes.
The system.
An ism.
Yes, and we're going to change the world. Yes. And don't forget the merchandise.
Oh, yeah. Check out our website here. Yeah. So basically, guys. Uh-oh, I'm replaying the intro here. Definitely screwed up. There we go. All right, cool. So, guys, do us a favor. Check out the merch, like Cook said. We are on thebadteachers.com. This is where we got our lesson plans at that we'll share with you. We've also, have a few articles on there, just some ideas that you can use in the classroom. You can upload your bad teacher moment to our Facebook page or our Instagram page. But do us a favor. We're trying to get this thing going. If you liked what you saw here today and you want to see more of the bad teachers, you want to join the bad teacher crew, you want to be salty with the rest of us, just go ahead and like, share, subscribe. Join the bandwagon. We really, really want to see you guys here. So thanks for watching. All right, Cook.
Oh, no, well, you got to play the song.
Oh, I got to play the outro?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it here.
Yeah, you got to play the song.
Play the song.
So we can go out in style.
All right. Here it is.
And no, Starbucks is not a sponsor.
It could be.
Well, yeah, you can.
if they want to. We'll see you guys later.